I'm very glad to welcome our next guest for our onstage conversation. So, Ahmed Aljunied is a VP of Engineering and Product at Go-Jek. And while a lot of you might have not heard about this name, it's one of the most successful unicorns in Southeast Asia with billions of dollars in funding and providing a super app for ride-hailing, food delivery, and other things. And I'm very excited to welcome him here to discuss on how to scale organizations and what to do. Thank you very much for coming. I'd love to discuss with you the different stages of growth that organizations go to. So I think while very few people here have had the luxury, the experiences you do, like scaling an organization at the hyper speed that you do, I want to go back to a little bit earlier stages. So I want to really see from ground zero. A lot of people here in the audience are founders and thinking about their first startup. So how do you scale from founders to first hires? What are your advices for getting the first few non-founding members of the team on board?
Sure. Perhaps before I answer that question, as you mentioned, not many people know about or have heard about Go-Jek, perhaps, in this region. Go-Jek started off, surprisingly, from day one as a super app, launching 3 services, first of which was a bike taxi service, a concierge service, and a courier service. So just to paint a picture, if I'm going to work tomorrow morning, I can schedule probably not for me, but I could schedule a mani or pedicure in the morning or a blowout for my hair. Once that's done, I can get a car on demand to take me to the office. At the office, during lunchtime, I might want to eat clean. So I can use our food delivery service, GoFood, to send me a salad, for example. And perhaps I forget that tonight or tomorrow is my anniversary, and I need to get a gift for my wife. So I can use GoShop, our concierge service, to pick up a gift from the mall. And perhaps on my way home from the office, I'm tired and I want a massage. I can schedule one so that the masseuse is waiting for me at my apartment when I get home. And we can pay for all these services using our e-wallet called GoPay, and also our credit line called Pay Later. So just to paint a picture of what goes on in Go-Jek. And as you mentioned, how do we scale from founder to the first employees of the team? So here I feel it depends on a few different factors. How much money do you have in the bank? That's one concern. Second is, what type of talent are you looking for? And finally, what is the profile of your founding team? Each of these factors will influence how you can hire. So for example, if you are looking for, let's say that's the team of founders very strong in this particular domain that you're going into, you might want to focus on hiring functional leaders to help you achieve certain goals in your, the very short time that you have to launch your product, especially if you are just hiring the initial team members. But you may also want to consider hiring stronger profile candidates, perhaps strong generalists that can fill any gaps in the organization. And you'll find that there are lots of gaps when you first get started. So it really depends on the objective, the domain that you're in, and the profile of the founding team.
What's the number one question you would ask a new hire to identify if they're fit of your team at that stage?
Right, so startups are very interesting, especially at that stage. There's a lot of ambiguity. And the only thing that you have as a founder at that point is your vision, the impact that you want to create. So, but if you are looking for just one really key characteristic of this individual, it would be, I feel, to be able to work in ambiguity, and not to freak out about it, not to demand a process from day one. Yeah.
Yes, I've screwed up a lot of hires. When you hire early on and hire people that expect a well-working organization, because as an early-stage startup, you basically do anything, and if you expect an organization with assistants booking your flights and like taking care of every minor detail, then these people tend not to be successful in organizations. So I think that's a very, very good advice for the founders in the audience. So I think I have another question a bit related to that. So one thing that I've seen often for startups is that they manage to hire people of the same characteristics of them. So if they're like tech founders, they hire very good engineers because they know what to look for in a good engineer. If they like have a product management or UX background, they know what to do. So since your organization is now also fairly large and not only like spanning like one function that was like your personal expertise, how do you successfully hire and get on board people that are from functions that are not directly your primary expertise?
Yes, this is a curious one. I have had to hire across different functions, as you mentioned, like the research function or product design function. It's definitely not my expertise. But there's a lot of help available out there. Definitely more so in my situation because there are many functional leaders in my organization. But if we step back a bit and we look at perhaps an early or medium stage startup, then you would need to reach out to other people for advice for what to look for. But you can always do the initial assessment on the fit, on the characteristics that you're looking for. And then hand it off to someone that you trust to help assess the technical capability.
So switching on the side of the people who want to join, so what steps do you take to motivate the people, that you make sure the people come on board are really like thrilled to be part of your team? So what steps do you do to successfully motivate and drive the team forward?
Right. So it really starts from the moment they apply to join. That experience is important, and more often than not, when you interview candidates, you realize that all of them, at least those that end up being a culture fit, all of them are very interested or very passionate about learning and growing, and those are the type of candidates that we are interested in. So their experience really starts from the time they, if it's an engineering position, then the time they get an email for the code assignment, all the way through the interviews to the point that they get accepted, and in preparation for their join date. So you want to keep that excitement going, and with frequent touch points through our recruiting team. And then from day one, you want to immerse them into the organization. And as we've grown fairly large, there are a lot more things that we would like you to get exposed to in your first week, to get an appreciation for what goes on in the business. Especially having engineers get exposed to the operations process, to get an appreciation for what goes on there when a user just taps a button on the application, all the havoc that it creates. Yeah, so to create the appreciation.
So do you have an experience of a candidate that really amazed you during the application process, that you said, wow, I need to have this person, I need to have that person on board, they did something so amazing during the interview process that you've not seen? Do you have any memorable story to share in that regards?
Yes, I do. Surprisingly, not from very senior profiles, but from a fresh graduate profile, where we have this candidate that had really demonstrated a strong desire to learn, not by just saying that he or she enjoys learning, but actually putting in the work and demonstrating that they have built up this capability in their free time. Being a being a student is not easy. You're taking on so many things at the same time. You're trying to help yourself stand out from the rest of the students by doing extra activities. At the same time, you have to build up the skill set so that you're relevant enough for startups or technology organizations to be interested in you. So to be able to build up a skill set, for example, for this particular candidate, it was in Golang. to be able to demonstrate that he had built up a very good understanding of it. And at the same time, having that enthusiasm in all our interactions, that really stood out for me for this particular candidate. Yeah, and he's doing really well. Yeah.
So he or she built a prototype during the interview, or what did they do to demonstrate their capability?
Right, so in our interview process, we are always hands-on. So we do pair programming during the interview. We discuss a lot of different design challenges during the interview. But it's not only what he did during the interview, but also being able to discuss things that he had done on the side.
So you shared a little bit about the successes, but I think for founders also hiring new people is a key risk, right? Like if you raise your first venture money, put it into hiring a few people and they don't prove to be good fits, that can be very costly for the organization. So can you share some of your experiences where you got people on board that were not a success, and like kind of like learnings that you would share with the audience that they can hopefully avoid similar problems?
Right, yes. Hiring mistakes are extremely expensive and can hurt the team. I believe to avoid this, I believe the hiring mistakes start to happen when you start to lose confidence in your process. So it's important even early on, even when hiring your first few team members in a new organization, is to establish a hiring process. It does not have to be complex. Of course, in the larger technology organizations, it can involve many steps, 5 interviews, 7 interviews. We can't do that, in a new startup. But you do have to have a standard process, maybe a couple of steps before you decide to hire the candidate. Once you have that process, all you have to do is just fill up your pipeline. So you have to build up your funnel, getting more leads into your process to finally, hopefully, spit out candidates that you can hire. And you have to trust that process. And it will get hard because a lot of large organizations, may be sucking all that talent. But we just have to believe that at any one point in time, there's always there are candidates out there that are looking for the type of experience that you're offering. So you have to trust that, fill up the pipeline, and don't compromise. So, if you have a dry month and you didn't get to hire anyone, and, there's a candidate that's so-so, and, perhaps on the technical side, the candidate is good, but on the culture fit side, you're not too sure, you have that hesitation, don't compromise. Because the wrong hire with the wrong attitude, the wrong characteristics can really damage your team.
Yeah, I so much agree with that. Right? I think it's so tempting when you have like just a pressure to deliver a new feature and you don't find the right person that said like, well, that person is still going to help me somewhat. But for me also, it has never turned out good. Whenever I made it like a compromise in hiring, I regretted it immediately. And like, I mean, as I say in the organization, right, like A players hire other A players. If you hire B players, they hire C players, and then like you're screwed with your organization from there going forward. So I very much agree with that. So I think that's a great advice. And I mean, I think the level of scale that you've like scaled up your organization in a very short time is of course remarkable, considering like how young Go-Jek is and like how fast the organization has scaled up. So my next question is in terms of this like hyper-scaling, growing organizations super fast, how do you maintain or build an organizational culture that can kind of like support this? Because like if you're small, then like the founders transpire their values to the people around them, then new people come on board and they learn. But once your organization scales like 100% a year or more, then that's of course very hard to do with these kind of informal processes. So how do you build the culture, how do you instill these values into the company that they get maintained in this kind of growth that you've experienced?
Maintaining culture requires deliberate effort. It cannot be something that we do on the side and write a bunch of values on the wall. And you realize this at the very early stage in your startup. When you're working in a very small team, you interact with everyone daily and very frequently. So you set this kind of expectation of what type of behaviors team members should have. And this is unspoken, but as you grow bigger, you have to make it explicit so that new members know what is expected of them. Of course, if you have done your hiring process right, as they say, you should hire and fire by your culture, then you would have had a good start. It gets really tricky when you start growing from, say, 12 people up to 50 people. Then you're getting at a stage where you might not be able to recognize the people in your team anymore, or the people in your company anymore. There's so many people coming in at a rapid pace. So it is important, I feel, to start thinking about and explicitly articulating the expectations of the behaviors that your team must follow from the early days. You cannot wait until you're 100 people, 150 people. Then by then, I think you've missed the train.
Yeah, no, I think what you said at the beginning, that culture is something you need to deliberately design. I very much agree with that. And I think, like, again, from my experience being a founder, in the beginning, it's like so easy to forget about that because it comes just like naturally. But if you don't like codify it, if you don't put it like down, then it's very hard for other people to absorb. What you have like in your heart and your brain, other people don't automatically learn that. So I think this makes a lot of sense in my experience. So in terms of, since you're still scaling your organization, so if there's people here that would love to join your organization, what would you expect from them?
Oh, what would I expect from you? It would depend on which part of the organization you are joining. We are a very flat organization in the sense that there are only probably just 3 levels to the CTO, and internally we do not express any hierarchical concept. We are all sitting together, solving problems together on a day-to-day basis. So my expectation is definitely for someone that is very excited to do what he or she is doing, very passionate about what you're doing, loves to learn. We have a couple of values that we do expect our team members to have. One of which is to be fast and fearless, right? To be able to move forward without hesitation. But at the same time to be a scientist. So to make your decisions based on data and not just based on gut feel. And at the size that we're in right now, there's really no excuse to go by gut feel anymore. You could make a case perhaps if you are a brand new startup and you have limited resources. But even then, you could find ways to justify decisions based on data. So just some of the expectations that I would have. So you've seen also very different ecosystem. You've graduated in Silicon Valley. You've worked in Southeast Asia now. You've lived before in Southeast Asia as well. So having been to this ecosystem, what is kind of your advice for this ecosystem if they want to scale, if they want to have their own success story? What would be your advice for these young founders to take from the success stories that you've seen? What would be your number one advice to young founders here who want to scale up an organization and learn from the things that you've seen in the different ecosystems that you've been part of? What would be your number one advice to everybody here? My number one advice would be to think globally, to think big, but at the same time to really focus. So yeah, it might be a bit contradictory, but in that moment, you really have to focus. So one of the challenges that founders might have, I'm sure founders will have, unless you've had experience building several companies, is that you tend to want to solve many problems at the same time. But you must realize you do not have the capacity for that, you do not have the resources for that, you probably do not have the money for that. You really have to focus on being really excellent at that one or two things that can help you stand out. Of course, this depends on the type of market that you are entering. Are you entering an established market? Are you creating a new market? But essentially, you really have to focus. But at the same time, don't lose the big picture. Take a step back every now and then. Make sure you have the right mentors and friends that can help you see the big picture and keep in touch with the opportunities out there and not solve a problem that's too small.
Thank you very much. I highly appreciate that you made all the way from Jakarta to visit us here.
My pleasure.
And yes, again, it's a big honor to have you here. Thank you very much.